So I'm going to do a little demo on using dock wax. It's spelled D-O-P. This is something that we use to attach stones to nails so that you have a handle. When you're going to grind enamels, a lot of times we use this also to make a dopping stick, which is like a nail or a dowel to hold something as a temporary handle. Now in this particular case, we're just using it to fill up this inner bezel, which is going to be a support. It's not going to be a permanent part of the piece, but it's going to hold it up while we're repoussing, and I'll show you guys that later. So the most important things to remember about dock wax is that it won't stick to anything that's hard or wet or too shiny. So a steel block, no. Anything that's wet, no. Your fingers, warm and porous. So when this is heated up, it will stick to you and burn like a motherfucker. So make sure you dip your hands in the water before you touch it when it's warm, or it will stick to you and burn like a motherfucker, okay? Most important thing to remember. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a small flame and I'm gonna gently heat this. It comes in big sticks like this, usually like long pieces, but we've already used quite a bit of it. So I'm gonna heat it gently and I'm gonna drip it down in here. And because it won't stick to the steel block, if I warm this bezel up just a tiny bit, it'll kind of just fill it up. You can also fill up things that you want to curve with this. It's a really sort of versatile studio tool. Now you'll notice when I heat it up, I'm not going to get it to the point where it's like smoking and stinky. You're supposed to try to gently just heat it so that it drips a little bit. Because otherwise, if you really go crazy, it's like a type of sealing wax. It'll catch fire and smell. Neither of which are really good things. So you always want to have your bowl of water. Back when I was an apprentice and I still did things like wear pantyhose, I was doing this once and I held it over my lap and it went through my pantyhose and stuck to my leg and burned like a motherfucker. And that's why I can tell you how it burns. Back when I wore pantyhose, what was I thinking? Okay. So if you watch, like I've got my little flame and I'm gonna heat it gently. And if when I see it like smoke, I kind of pull back a little bit or catch fire like that. Contraindicated, you don't really want that. And you see, as you heat gently, it'll start to drip down in there. It's good for filling in something you don't want to collapse or sticking one thing to something else. Heat just a little bit more. And I'm just going to heat the bezel a tiny bit so that that wax relaxes. You know what I mean? And fills it up. I probably need to put a little bit more in there. You see how it's starting to just relax? I want it to, you know, settle and actually really fill in that bezel. And don't heat it so much that it bubbles up. If you do, you'll just have to like let it cool a little bit and maybe tidy it up. So you see what I'm doing though, right? How it's just sort of settling and filling the bezel. But the key is to heat it gently. There we go. And sometimes it's good to heat it a little bit and just pull back and give it a second because it doesn't do everything right at once. It can be hotter than you think, if you know what I mean. Like it'll keep moving after I pull the flame away. See, that was too much. Don't do that. I did that only to show you guys that that was too much. Okay, so you see that, how it kind of flowed out to the side? So I can, if I want, I could dip my fingers in the water, boop, boop, and touch it and flip it over and make sure it filled in the back as well. But basically the most important rules, you know, don't touch it with your bare fingers when it's warm or it'll stick and burn. If you remember that, you're all right. Okay. So this is a sort of a very simple form of repousse that you can do. You can fuse a couple wires down and then repousse in between them to give you a beautiful poof. This is the middle of one of our Roman settings, which gets repousséd. So for us, we've got two bezels basically. We've got a bezel on the outside, and then we've got a filled bezel on the inside, which is going to serve as our support. But essentially, we're going to be repousséing in here. We're going to be making just like a nice, beautiful curve there. So how do you know what dap to use to repousse this? I'm going to show you. The most common mistake is that people pick too small of a dap. And then what you get is like a weird little trough in there instead of getting that beautiful wide curve. So, for example, anything that will fit down in between your wires, too small. Okay? This one is the actual correct size. I'll hold it up so hopefully you can see it. I don't know, maybe is it better like that? Do you see how it just hits on both sides and does not go all the way down inside? That is what you're going for, which is usually bigger than you think you need. Because this is going to give you a beautiful crisp line on the inside and the outside and that nice curve. If you get too small, you just end up with a weird little furrow, which is not good, okay? So I'm going to do it on some high-tech equipment on a towel. Folded up paper towel works just as well. Just something with a little bit of cushion, a piece of leather. So this is not the kind of thing that I'm going to like screw around and put in pitch or anything, because that just takes too much time and we don't need it. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to flip it. Now I need to know where to repousse. So usually all I do is take my tool You see what I mean? And you can see where the circle is. And let me make sure that I actually picked the right one when I was talking to you guys. Yes, I did. Okay.
Should it hit the back sheet when it's down in between the inner and the outer bezel?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait, no. Not all the way in.
It just hits the sides.
Just hits the sides,
Okay,
yes.
it was hard to see, so I wanted to clarify.
So now that I've got my circle, and then you want to make a decisive mark. So this is not the kind of thing where you want to take this and go like, la la la, and do a little rubbing thing. You want to like take it and lean in. Usually I do this when I'm standing up because I'm short. So I'm just going to hold this. You see that? And I'm gonna go all the way around because I'm trying to make a smooth stroke, not little small movements that will give me like a bumpy finish. Now, I don't want my little guy in the middle to fall out of there. You know, we melted it in just so that it's attached, but to help prevent that, I'm just gonna move the paper towel and like leave the piece be. And this is a lot like anything like when you're setting or whatever, the force is really coming from your shoulder. You're just kind of leaning in a little bit. And you see what a beautiful mark you get? So you can do stuff like this where you can fuse down a bunch of wires and then just repousse in between the wires and get a beautiful, you know, highs and lows and all kinds of whatnot. And it's really pretty simple to do, because all you need is some daps and, I don't know, a few wires. So I'm just gonna keep going all the way around. And ideally what I want is sort of a nice crisp line on the inside and the outside. So first I get my beautiful curve in there, and then I'm probably gonna lean toward the outside a little bit and lean toward the inside a little bit and press on it a little more to try to get kind of a crisp edge. But this is like really easy to give you a really beautiful effect, you know, because you think about it, you could just fuse down a bunch of wires and do this all in between, and you can do some really lovely stuff. And it's pretty fast and easy as far as chasing and repousse goes. So you see that, how I just kind of leaned against the outside a little bit? I'm just trying to get the edges to look kind of defined. You don't have to go crazy or anything when you do this, because you're not trying to get that thing like all the way down to the bottom. You're just trying to get a nice smooth curve.
So we don't have to decide right now. We can see how big our pieces are once we make them, and then we can figure out how else to attach.
See what I mean? So it's really pretty fast and easy because I'm leaning into it. And this is a 30 gauge back sheet, by the way, so granted, it's not very thick. If you were using a really thick back sheet, you'd probably have to, you know, use a hammer and stuff like that. So stuff like this is usually better with a thinner back sheet, because then you can just do it with the tool. So that's essentially it. Like maybe I'll, you know, any area that doesn't look quite as crisp, I can just press a little.
That's gonna be the easiest thing.
But, ta-da! Repousse.